Hello soulmates, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. If this is the first time of seeing my channel, thank you for stopping by. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for watching. So in this tutorial, we're going to be learning how to make this corset top that has a stylish strip neck design. If you're interested in learning this, please join me while we get started. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be making use of this material. I'm going to be using a lace, a doll face that matches with the lace. I'm going to use a stool net, and I'm going to be using red line bone. This one is about half an inch, and then I'm going to be using another smaller one which is about 7 mm. Okay, 7 mm, that's 7 millimeter. And I'm also going to be using a plastic bone, although I'm not going to be using only this bigger plastic bone. I'm going to be using a smaller one. Then I'm going to also make use of this stay, and this is fiber. I'm going to make use of a fiber, and I'm also going to use this ready-made bra cup that I already have here. So let's get started. Okay, soulmates. So we're going to be drafting the front and the back pattern together. As you can see, I went ahead to divide my paper into two equal parts, and I just drew a line at the center front, which is about half an inch, and I'm going to be starting from there. And at the top, I drew a straight line, which is going to be my starting line or my shoulder line. So I've gone ahead to mark my shoulder to bust, shoulder to underbust, shoulder to waist, and then the shoulder to the hip. Okay, so the shoulder to bust I'm using is 9.5, shoulder to underbust 12.5, shoulder to the hip is 8 inches. So the shoulder to waist for the front is 16 inches, shoulder to waist for the back is 14.5. So I've gone ahead to mark that all round. So from the waist of the back I marked 8 inches below, and also for the waist on the front I marked 8 inches below, which is going to be the hip measurement, and I went ahead to draw a straight line. Not the hip measurement, I mean to say the shoulder to the hip. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and label it so that I'm able to indicate these lines when I'm working on them. So I'll just go ahead and label it: the bust line, the underbust line, waistline, and the hip line. So now for me to get the corset length of this dress, I'm just going to come down from the waistline by 6 inches, and I'm going to draw a straight line there. Okay, I'm using a corset length of 22 inches, so by the time I come down from my waistline by 6 inches, I'm also going to be having the same length. Okay, so from that length I came up by 1 inch, and I connected a straight line like this. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the same process at the back part, where I'll come down from the waistline by 6 inches and draw a straight line. Then I'll also mark 1 inch above it and connect it with a straight line. Okay, so this is going to serve as a corset length. So you have to use a length that is very much comfortable for you or your clients. Okay, it can be 5 inches below the waist, can be 4 inches below the waist, depending on what you want. Okay, so after that I'll just label it corset length, just like I did here. So after doing this, I'm going to be getting the shoulder area. So this is an off shoulder dress. Of course, I'm not going to be using the yoke or the neckline, but I'm going to do that for tutorial sake. Okay, so I'm going to mark a neck width of 3 inches, and I also went to mark the shoulder measurement divided by 2. Mine is 7 inches, and I marked it there. I came down by 1 inch, and I marked 7 inches for the armhole depth. To get this armhole depth, you're just going to divide the bust circumference by 6 and add 1.5. So I'm working with a bust circumference of 33 inches. Okay, so I also marked the shoulder measurement divided by 2 on that same point where I marked earlier, and I'm connecting them together like this. So if you're watching my tutorial earlier, you'll be familiar with this. Okay, so I'm just going to use a neck depth of 3 inches there, and I'm going to also go ahead and connect it with a curve. So what I did earlier was to get my shoulder slope, which is marking the part where I marked 3 inches width on that shoulder line and connecting it to the 1 inch I came down from where I marked the shoulder measurement divided by 2. That gave me my shoulder slope. Okay, so for that point where I stopped after coming down from the shoulder slope by 1 inch and then the armhole depth, I drew a straight line there. That became my chest line. Okay, so your chest line is just simply your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5, then plus 1 inch for the shoulder slope. So I'm going to repeat the same process for the back. Okay, just exactly what I did there, I'm going to repeat it for the back. The only difference is that I'm going to be using a neck depth of 1 inch. Although we're not going to be using this, it's not needed, but I'm doing it for the sake of tutorial. Okay, so after doing this, you're going to get our armhole curve, and now I'm going to mark the bust circumference divided by 2. So what I have there is 8.25, but I'm going to be adding 0.25 for ease. This is optional. You do not have to add it if you don't want to. So instead of 8.25, I'm using 8.5. So I'm just going to mark it there, both for the front and back, and I'm going to take the midpoint of that armhole depth, which is going to give me 3.5. By the time I take the midpoint, I'm going to come in from that midpoint by half an inch. Then I'm going to connect it with my curve from the slope of the shoulder to the half an inch and down to the part where I mark the bust circumference divided by 4. Okay, so just go ahead and connect it like this. After doing it for the front, I'll do the same thing for the back. Okay, soulmate. So I want us to know that in this corset, I'm going to be doing a dartless corset. Okay, I want to make the corset to be dartless. So if you want to add that, you can actually do that. It's optional. So I'm going to mark the bust span measurement divided by 2 on the bust line. I'm working with a bust span of 7 inches divided by 2 is going to give me 3.5. Okay, so I also marked it on the hip. Sorry, I marked it on the what's it called? The corset length. Yes, I marked it on the corset length and the bust line, and I connected it with a straight line. So I connected it with a straight line from the bust line to the hip line. Okay. So now I'm going to take my my compass rather, and I'm going to fix a pencil there. This is actually optional. Okay, it's just for me to draw a circle that will help me to serve as it will just serve as a guide for me. Okay. So you can see the way I placed it, it should be equal like this, exactly like this. That is the bust span measurement divided by 2. That is what it is. So I'll just go ahead and draw a circle. Of course, I know we can't see the circle very well, so I'm going to trace it out with my marker pen. I'm going to be using a dotted line because this is not an actual, it's not an actual measurement. It's just for us to use as a guide. Okay. Okay, so after drawing the circle, I'm just going to look at that part where I have the tip of the circle. You can see where I'm pointing. You can see that it's a little bit below the underbust line. So that point where I have that tip is going to be my actual underbust line, okay? Yes, that's going to be my actual underbust line. I'm going to be using that as my actual underbust line. But this is optional. You can still work with your normal underbust line if you are sure you took the measurements accurately. So now after marking that, I just drew a straight line there, which I did not make very visible because it's optional. So I just marked 1.25 on both sides. So now take note, you can use 1 inch on both sides. Okay, 1 inch, I think 1 inch is standard on both sides. You can use it if you are you're not a plus size, maybe your bust circumference is about 36 and below. But if your bust circumference is higher than that, I would advise you use 1.25. Okay, so after doing that, I came down from the bust line by 0.75 where I marked the bust span line, and then I'm connecting it with a curve to meet that 1.25 I marked on the underbust on both sides. Okay, you can see what I did. So I've connected them together. So I connected them to meet that new underbust line I marked under the tip of that circle. So after doing this now, I'm going to go ahead and mark my body measurements. I'm going to impute all the body measurements, dividing them by 4. The bust circumference divided by 4 on the chest line, the underbust measurement divided by 4 on the underbust line, the waist measurement divided by 4 on the waistline, and the hip measurement divided by 4 on the hip line. So the bust circumference I'm working with is 33 inches, underbust 28 inches, waist 26 inches, but I subtracted 2 inches for it because I want to snatch the waist. So I'm using 24 instead of 26. Okay, so this is up to you. If you want to snatch it by 3 inches, 2 inches, 1 inch, just go ahead and do that. So I marked the hip measurement divided by 4, of which I'm working with a hip of 36 inches. So I went ahead to connect them with my curve like this, and I'll go ahead and also repeat it on the back part. That is, I'll repeat the process of the measurement and the bust span. I'll repeat it on the back pattern as well. Like I said, we're going to be drafting the front and the back together. Okay, so soulmate, if you are finding this tutorial very helpful, do not forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel so you can be notified whenever we upload new videos, and if you have any questions, do not hesitate to leave it in the comment section. Okay, soulmate, so now we're going to take the bust dart, which is 1.5 inches. So it's just the difference between the shoulder to the waist in the front and that of the back. Okay, so I'm going to mark it below the bust line, and I'm connecting it to meet the bust span line I drew on the bust line. You can see what I did. So I just indicated it with that sign to show that we are going to cut it off, like we're not going to be using it. So now I'm going to be marking the bust bridge. Okay, this is where the cleavage area is going to be, how open you want it to be. I'm just going to mark it on that bust line, half an inch. Then I'm going to connect it to the underbust. So what I did exactly is just to mark half an inch from the center front line, and that is on the bust line there. I marked half an inch there and I connected it, but I don't want mine to be on the bust line because I feel it's going to be a bit opened, so I just extended it by 0.75. You can use half an inch, you can use 1 inch, whatever is comfortable for you is what you should use. Okay, so after doing that, I went ahead to connect from that point where I have the bust span line. From the bust bridge, I connected it to the underbust line where I took that 1.25 darts for the cup area. You can see what I did. So now for me to do the other side, I first divide the shoulder by 2. I took the midpoint of that shoulder and I connected the midpoint to meet the bust span line on the bust line. Okay, so I'm going to slash it open for me to be able to close my bust dart. Okay, after slashing that part, I also went ahead to cut out that shoulder line I drew there open so I can close the bust dart properly. So now after that, I secured it with a tape and then I used my ruler to connect the lines together. You can see that the chest line and the underbust line are no longer meeting, so I'm going to use my ruler to connect them together and I'm going to trace them like this. Okay, so mate, to get this other part of the curve, remember we marked 3.5 inches as the bust span measurement. So I'm just going to take 3.5 inches there, mark it there, and I'm going to be adding half an inch. Okay, if a plus size, please add 0.75 or 1 inch. Okay, add it so that it's going to give that place enough space for it to relax. Okay, because the breast is fuller at that part. So after marking it there, I went ahead to connect it to the underbust line with a curve. You can see what I have done. I connected it to meet the chest line, and then I went ahead to open the bust dart, securing it at the shoulder area. Okay, this is because I want to get the tightening at that over bust side. Okay, so I wanted to use 3.5 inches above the bust span line, and I realized that my circle is just exactly at 3.5, so I just drew a straight line from that circle, as you can see, and I mark half an inch on both sides of that shoulder line we drew earlier. So I'm checking if the lines are actually equal, and while checking it I realized that the other part is longer than the first part. Okay, as you can see, so instead of 3.5 I'm having 3.75 at that point. So I'll just place that 3.75 exactly on that bust span line and mark the excess above. Then I connected it with a ruler like this, and now I'm going to connect it to the bust bridge where I mark the cleavage measurement, as you can see. So I'll just connect it with a straight line, and it's going to help give you that stylish cup design that you have, that is like a v-neck at that design. Okay, so you can see I'm gonna ahead to connect it together, and then the other part of the dart I'm going to connect it to meet that other cup line where we marked on the chest line, as you can see. So at this point we have a two-piece cup. If you want a three-piece cup, you can just go ahead and just divide it the way you want it. Okay, so I wanted to use this two-piece cup, but I ended up changing my mind and I did not use two-piece. I ended up using three-piece. But for now, we are just going to go ahead and close this bust dart. Okay, as you can see, I'm going to close it back and secure it because this is actually what we are going to be using. This is how we are going to be cutting it. This dress does not have a yoke, it does not have a sleeve, so it is sleeveless, and this is how it's going to be. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just showing you that if you are going to be using a yoke or any design there, you can just come down from that chest line by 0.75 and connect that lines together like that. That is for those that want to put a yoke or any kind of design at that point, but I'm not going to be using it. I'm just going to be working directly on the actual chest line. Okay, so you can also connect it from the bust cup to that 0.75 if you want, or you just go ahead and use it directly. Whichever way you want is fine. So on the back part, I'm going to come down by 1.25, which is already on my bust line from the chest line. So I'm going to connect the armhole from the chest line to meet that 1.25, which is already on the bust line at the center back. So I'm coming down from the corset length. I just marked half an inch above the first line and the second line I drew. Okay, you can see what I did, and I connected it to meet the lines like that. I marked it the same thing at the back, came up by half an inch and marked it. I just connected it with a slight curve to just go into the lines like that. Okay, you can see I'm not really giving it any particular design. It's just for that part to be a bit curvy. So you can do it this way or put whatever design you want there. So now for the lacing bars or the lacing areas, I'm going to mark 2.5 inches on the chest line. Okay, that is the chest line we drew that is slanted. Okay, then I'm going to mark it on the corset line as well. Then I marked 1.5 inches on the waistline because I want it to have that design. So whichever design you want to put, you can just go ahead and do it that way. So after doing that, I'm actually done with the back pattern, as you can see. Then for this front pattern, I'm going to be cutting it on the dotted. I'm going to be cutting the underbust area, that is the underbust corset. I'm going to be cutting it from that dotted lines I drew for the circle. But so I'm not going to be cutting it directly from this paper, so I'm just going to take an extra paper and place it under, and I'm going to use my tracing wheel to trace out the cups. Okay, so if you're going to be using this particular cup, you're going to just take your tracing wheel and trace it out. But if you're going to be using an already made cup, you don't have to go through this process, okay, because you're just going to be using an already made cup for this. So you can see I've gone ahead to trace it down on the paper, and I'm using my marker pen to make it very visible. After that, I can now go ahead and cut it. So back to my pattern here, I'm just going to take the back part off and cut it out, like cut out the patterns. Okay, so I'll just advise you watch me carefully while I do so. Okay, so while cutting the back pattern, I almost cut out the wrong part, and I realized and I made the correction. So I would like you guys to watch me carefully so that you don't cut out the right part off. Okay, so after cutting the back pattern, I went to the front part. Like I said, I'm not going to be cutting directly on the cup. I'm going to come in a little bit from that dotted lines I drew, which is the circle lines. Okay, and as you can see, I'm connecting the cup to meet with that chest line because that is where it's going to be stopping. Okay, I'm not going to be coming down by that 0.5 like I said earlier. So the reason why I'm not using the exact cup line is because I'm working with a tool net, and tool net is very stretchy. So by the time I still cut it like that, it will still work. Okay, so if you're using a stretchy material like mine, just go ahead. If you are one who wants to upgrade your skills in corset making, you want to learn how to, draft corset pattern very well, and you want to learn how to make Victorian corset, cupped corset, inbuilt corset, overbust corset, we are having a class in May which is going to commence very soon. If you're interested, you can join the class. It's going for 5,000 naira. If you're interested, just send a message to the number that is displayed on the screen. Okay, and if you're also a beginner who wants to learn fashion, you want to go learn pattern drafting very well, you want to know how to start in the fashion industry, we also have a beginner class which is also going for 5,000 naira. So at this point, we're actually done with this drafting and cutting of this piece. As you can see, this is the cup part. I'm just going ahead to label it, as you can see. So I went ahead to use my tape to just secure it well to see what it looks like, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so mates, we are done with this pattern drafting and cutting. So in my next video, we'll be going about the sewing process of this corset top. If you find this tutorial helpful, please do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you guys for watching. See you in my next video.